and welcome back to the Rip Off Podcast, the show that only exists for the next 12 to 15 minutes. I'm your host, Christian Wilcox. My guest today is Tanner Kenley. Tanner Kenley is a sophomore English major from Little Rock, Arkansas. He's also my roommate, but most importantly, he's the co-host of ASU-TV's newest show, The Rip Off, with the other co-host being yours truly. Tanner, welcome to the show.
Hello.
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 I know, this is great. This is so great.
Mhm.
Last time we were all talking about our creative process for the last summit, and we're doing it again. But now we actually have proof of something.
We do. We've created.
Yeah, we are the creators.
We are the creators
of our own world. The world
Mhm.
the world that is our oyster. We are oyster
Yeah.
makers, some would say.
I don't really like oysters.
Okay.
Moving on.
Yeah, moving on. To provide more context, as we said earlier, we are the hosts of ASU-TV's newest show, newest as of the recording of this, it came out yesterday.
Correct.
The Rip Off, a satirical comedic take on talk shows inspired by Between Two Ferns and the Eric Andre Show.
Yeah.
We just kind of mess with our guests a little bit. We banter with them.
We improv a lot.
Lots of improv.
Lots of little kind of off the dome rips, as you were rip-offs.
Yep.
Rips off the domes.
Yep. As you can see, I mean,
We're doing it right now.
yeah. What's more to love?
What's more to love?
What's more to love?
What's more to love than that?
But to actually dive into this interview, the first question, I mean, what was your initial reaction to when I first pitched it? And also, when did I first pitch it? Because I was thinking about that when I had looked over the questions for that. Because I feel like I remember.
So it was definitely a thing you had in your mind during last semester.
Mhm.
So, I mean, whatever that is, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And I remember you just kind of saying, like, it's a thing. I never really did it because, you've switched majors, but I knew you were switching back and you knew you were switching back. So you're thinking of a project. But I don't know if you pitched it to me as a, hey, do you want to do this with me until the summer? And I mean, I loved it. I think I thought it was a great idea. And I've like we said, I don't know, like on last interview of like just wanting to do it, like talking about things and then just doing it. So it was something that it was kind of like, I was in a period of time in my life where I was working on getting up and doing it. And, I was like, this is a great opportunity for me to actually embrace some creativeness and go in and do it. And so, just do.
Yep. And we do.
And we do.
And we talk and we think and we do and we say
talk
and we do.
And go and do. But yeah, so I think it was just like that recognition of me of saying, this is a great idea. This is something that I would be proud of and want to do. And I'm happy that you invited me to do it because I'm loving doing it
And doing. I mean, yeah, because that was kind of my thought process. Was I do remember kind of talking about it and then pitching it, and we had talked about it all summer of doing this. And then I remember like right before school started, I was just like, okay, are we actually doing this? Like, is this something? Because it was as much as it was my idea, it was dependent on you.
Right.
Of like, if I didn't have you as the co-host,
right,
then I was like, I need someone to banter off of and stuff. So it was kind of more.
And no one's as funny as I am.
I know. Yeah. I mean, we're the two funniest people.
Probably on the planet.
Yeah. Which we've talked about before.
The tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. Most people are the tip of the iceberg. We're deep beneath the blue sea.
Yeah. People don't.
With the mermaids.
And the sharks. And people need to
and
dive.
The Titanic.
People need to dive under and see how funny we actually are.
Under the sea.
Okay. Moving on.
Yeah. Getting back to the real thing.
Pivoting.
But I was saying of how you were so dependent. The show was dependent on you.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, okay, we really gotta lock this down. And as soon as you said yes, I was just like, one of a relief of just like, yeah. And then two of realization of being like, oh, so that means we actually.
Yeah. Like, I have to talk to professors.
I have to do all this now. And I have to. And because even of when I was pitching the show to Mr. Sullivan, because my idea was I would, meet in his office and we could, because I told him, I was like, we can talk about it later. And then literally after class, as another student is standing there waiting to talk to him, he just goes, okay, pitch it.
Yeah.
And I just went, I stayed silent for a little bit and I turned to the other student. I was like, you need to talk to him? Like, because I mean, this might take a second.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, man, you're good. And so he's just standing in the corner while I'm pitching this show and just
Yeah.
being like,
And
yeah,
then we'll just like
gonna-
mess with them.
yeah, we're just gonna like mess with people and like kind of, you know, push the envelope what we can and can't do
Yeah.
kind of deal. And he was just like, love it, great, love it, awesome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
at that point again, it was relief, but also realization
Mhm.
of all of it setting in, and kind of more so of talking about realizing how hard it is. What do you think has been the hardest part about this whole thing?
I would say I think that the most difficult part is finding the formula, if that makes sense. Like writing the bits is not hard. Like I can come up with bits. We can come up with bits all day. Even getting in the getting into the studio and setting up and filming is not like hard. It is finding that energy, finding that formula that works. And it's still just so early on. And I think like, you know, we just released our first episode, and it's good. I mean, like it works, and it was funny, and I was worried that it wasn't going to be. And there are moments that I laugh out loud at, and I've watched them, you know, 10 times now. You've watched them 300 times in the editing room. And, you know, I think finding like being able to consistently push that energy forwards throughout the season is kind of what is feeling like the daunting task. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that was something on the way here because I know you had used the term the formula a lot.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of worried of just what if there isn't a formula?
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, because we've talked about how we're starting with guests that we know pretty well, and we're kind of going to ease into going with guests that we don't know as well.
Even professors. And,
and people that we don't know.
Yeah.
If we can even get them on.
People we don't know if when we get them on we can mess with as much as we've messed with the last few people.
Yeah, finding the line and everything. But I definitely agree with that, of like figuring it out, of especially from just a hosting thing, because it's a lot of in my head of like, oh, this joke's gonna be really funny, this joke's gonna be funny, like you said, that's super easy.
Yeah.
And then of all the moments in between of like, okay, I need to remember all these things so that way I'm not pausing, looking at the notes and just going, but yeah,
Right.
and that's how I transition to stuff.
Right.
So it's definitely,
well, and even thinking about like, oh, this bit is going to be really funny, and then it's not. Like even with some of the stuff during Thomas's episode that just released yesterday, it's like we cut out a whole probably 2.5 minutes because it was something that we thought was going to be funny, and then it just wasn't.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were other reasons we didn't use it, but like I recognize it as like one of the main things is like it wasn't funny. Like there are things that weren't funny, and so and that will happen, and I think that's just something we have to kind of take the punches and roll with.
And it's some of the stuff that we've seen. And for reference, we have 3 more recorded already. And our next one of like, we both talked, the ending to it is not great.
Yeah.
Well, and it's very niche.
Very niche, and like just kind of worrying about, and it's also kind of one of those things is like, what is the mindset of recording this? Is it, oh, okay, I'm doing this to make myself laugh, and if other people laugh, great. Or is it, I need to be as general as possible so that other people laugh at it? And I think that a very, and I don't know too much about creative media. I'm not a creative media major.
I don't know much about it either.
But going, is that what makes good TV? Is making stuff personal to you that you find funny, and then the audience will find it? Or are you searching for the audience and I just don't know? And it's kind of like, that's another awkward phase of doing this show, is going, oh, am I, are we doing this in the terms of, oh, we're trying to appeal to a specific audience? Are we doing this because we're trying to appeal to ourselves? I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
and I think one of those is like kind of partially finding the line, but at the same time, I am more in the belief of, if you are not having fun making it, that is going to show.
Yeah. 100%.
And to where other people aren't even going to, if you're not enjoying doing it, people are not going to enjoy watching it because they'll be able to see through it. To where that gives us the advantage of being able to be more niche and to just kind of, you know, as long as we like it. And that's still some of the things I've told myself. But then sometimes I'll watch a thing back and it's just like, and I'm just like, although I think it's kind of funny, it's just not great in terms of a production. This is a show.
Yeah.
And like keeping a consistent flow.
Yeah.
And so it's having to blend our style of comedy with not necessarily a general quote unquote normal sense of humor, but just there's a fly in the room,
and it somehow morphed through the window, because earlier it was on the other side of the window. I'm very aghast right now.
Very aghast. Wow.
I'm quite
at
aghast.
a gregarious angle.
Yeah.
And that's what I just said. Another example of that, of saying at a gregarious angle.
It's egregarious.
Egregarious.
Egregarious angle, gregarious guy.
Oh, okay. But saying at an egregarious angle is something that's very niche to us, and it's just I wouldn't know how that translates to anything.
Yeah.
But I think it's just something that we have to figure out, and even if we don't figure it out, I keep having to remind myself, like, this is going to be far from perfect.
Yeah. Never done this before.
Yeah. But at the same time, it is that I've noticed, and I think part of it is just because I view it so much of like, this is my thing, and I've been telling everybody about this, and people are probably expecting lots of things, and like I tell so many people about it, to where it's like there's almost so much pressure to the point where I find satisfaction in like pockets and of it, to where it's so much of it is revolved around it being seen as work rather than just as a fun thing to do, because I'm putting so much, and because it's like I'm this is going to go in my portfolio and stuff of like I have to be 110% satisfied with it, which just it can't happen. That's just not
how it works. It's not going to. And I think that's kind of a thing about it, is like being able to alter your own perspective on your own work is really important when it comes to situations like this, where it is work. It's for a project, for a class, and it's going to be, in your portfolio as you go and, kind of are looking to get in the creative media field. But at the same time, it's fun, and we're doing it for fun. Like, we wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't fun to us.
Yeah. And I mean, talking about it being more fun as we get set to wrap things up here, I mean, what we talked about, what has been the hardest part? What's been the most fun part about all of this? You say with a very evil grin on your face.
Yeah, malicious intent. I really enjoyed Thomas and Reed's episode, just because they're our best friends. Like, we were playing with them the whole time.
We just got to mess with them.
Yeah. And it's fun being on camera. I don't do that much, and I think that's been one of my favorite parts, is like getting to go back and watch and go, hey, I was really funny right there. And like, but like be proud of something that I created. I think like that even goes back to earlier of us talking about like finally going and doing, and like but seriously, just being able to go back and watch what I've done and say, hey, I'm proud of that, and I'm happy that I've done this and that I can continue to do it. And so I think that's probably been the most fun part of just working in a creative aspect, because I've been creating all semester. I've been writing stuff and writing poems or whatever, and been like, and that's what gives me satisfaction. That's what gives me a feeling of accomplishment, is finishing something and creating something. And so this has been just another outlet for that. So
yeah, I totally agree. And it's like you were saying, of just being able to kind of show off, or just being like, hey, look how funny I am.
Look at me, I'm funny.
But it's also just being able to have something and be like, that's entirely mine. That creation is entirely mine, unique to us.
I came up with it, and then I filmed it, and then I edited it. Yeah.
To where it's super satisfying. But with all that being said, Tanner, thank you so much for appearing on the Rip Off podcast.
Yep, I'll never do it again.
Yeah, because in about 20 seconds, this show won't exist anymore. And with that all being said, Tanner, again, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you never.